Afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Bill Rentschler and Chief Meteorologist Ken Shimmick in the 1011 Now streaming studio. Ken, it's one of our favorite days of the year in the meteorological community.
Happy meteorological spring, Bill.
We finally made it through the winter season.
Winter is all behind us. No more snow, no more cold, right?
If only that were the case.
That is never the case.
But the good news is, again, we split up the seasons a little differently in our world. Again, the meteorological winter season, December, January, and February, that's your coldest 3 months of the year. So we've made it through that stretch. We've made it through the snowiest stretch of the year. That's in the rearview mirror.
Right. We're talking about meteorological, not astronomical. That, of course, will be astronomical spring will occur about 3 weeks from now. So depending on which one you follow, we go by the numbers here. So the coldest 3 months, December, January, February, those are your 3 meteorological winter months. And now we're into March, April, and May, the 3 spring months, meteorologically speaking.
Yes. So this live stream here, again, right now we're live on Facebook, YouTube, as well as on our 1011 Now live stream, which you can find on the 1011 apps, as well as the 1011now.com. We're going to go through a little bit, kind of looking back at February, the meteorological winter season overall. Pretty quiet for us here in Lincoln and southeastern Nebraska, at least. Kind of look ahead to March.
And we always like to take one look back before we take the 2 steps forward. So we're going to take a quick check of February and remind everybody how we did temperature-wise and precipitation-wise here in Lincoln for that month of February.
Yep. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll pull up the weather graphics again. This is February high temperatures starting off. Just to look at our temperatures in February as well as our precipitation. 19 days last month with above average, just high temperatures. Just 8 days with below average high temperatures, and they always seem to fall at the same time. It was that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, second half of the week, but that means the weekends were nice.
Right, and that's really how it played out, including this last weekend. And you can see there, we ended the month of February with 4 days in a row in the 50s, and in fact, we've been 55 so far today to begin March. So that's 5 days in a row here at the end of February and the very beginning of March, where temperatures were well above the seasonal average. And we also have to mention that 62. Weren't you saying yesterday that that is the warmest temperature of the year so far?
Yeah, of the year of the meteorological winter season. So December, January, February, 62 was the warmest. It was a beautiful day outside, beautiful way to start the week. And again, looks like we may have another day in the 60s maybe later this weekend.
It is looking out like Sunday might turn out to be a little bit breezier, maybe some cloud cover, but could be back in the 60s again for only the second time all year.
Yeah, so this February, a far cry from what we had 2 Februaries ago, when we had, again, the minus 31 degrees, the second coldest all-time temperature recorded in the Lincoln airport. So a much milder February this go-around. And the snow, again, save for 1 day, was kind of lacking, but the 1 day was a big snow. Again, we finished the month with 9.5 inches of snow on average. It's 7.1 for Lincoln, so about 2.5 inches above average. But the 1 day, February 16th, 8.8 inches.
Well, and 8.8 was the official number at the airport. And there were a lot of places in town that were reporting 10 inches, even up to 12 inches of snow. So certainly, depending on what part of the capital city you lived in, you could have seen or picked up more than that 8.8 that Thursday. And I also looked up last night, February of 2023, the first time we've actually had above average snowfall in the capital city since February of 2021. So it's been 2 years. It's taken us 2 years to get an above average snowfall month again since we had the 16.6 inches back in February of 2021.
Yeah, we went through a pretty big lull there. Again, up until that point on the 16th, again, we were top 5 least snowiest starts to winter of all time, again, after we had the least snowiest winter of all time last season.
Right, and all it took was one weather system, right? And again, one of the things we're going to talk about as we check out March is that we can get snow in March, and we can get a lot of snow in March. So I'm not saying that's the prediction. I'm just saying that's out there.
It's the possibility. So this is a look at kind of a broad brush strokes as a 10,000-foot view. Again, we mentioned it, but the warmest temperature we had in February, 62 on the 13th, followed by a few days later, the coldest, 9 below. And again, we just mentioned the 8.8 inches of snow on February 16th was the snowy. So if you break it down nitty-gritty, 45.2 degrees with the highs averaged out, and Ken, that was top 20.
Yeah.
But
just highs. We're talking about the high temperatures.
Just highs for warmest Februarys on record. So again, during the day it was nice. At night when most of us were sleeping, it was a little bit colder than average, about 2.5 degrees below normal. You average it all out, about a degree above average for the entire month of February, tied for the 44th warmest February on record. And then precip-wise, it was wet and a little bit snowy.
For February.
29th wettest February on record, and the 34th snowiest February.
And I always think it's interesting, too, if you look at the warmest temperature for the month, it was on the 13th, and then 3-4 days later, you were down at 9 below, and you had your 8 to 10 inch snowfall amount within about a 3 or 4 day span.
71 degree swing there between those 4 days, which is never fun. So that was February. This is a look at, again, meteorological winter as a whole, encompassing December, January, and February. And, we always, say, oh, it was really warm this month or it was really cold this month. But then when you look at it, a little longer time span, it all kind of comes out in the wash. And that's what happened this season. Again, the average temperature through that 3 months was just 0.3 of a degree above average. But we had some wild swings. December, 3 degrees below normal. January, 3.5 degrees above normal, and then this February, about a degree or so above normal. So again, it all adds up to about 0.3 of an inch above average.
And I think the thing that always strikes me now, and has for about the last 3, 4, 5 years, is the term wild swings. It seems like, for a lot of people, they just don't see the normal winter conditions anymore. Each month, December, in January, in February, we get these wild swings. Now, whether that's part of climate change, only time will tell. But you just see within these months, and even in the deepest, darkest times of winter, we get into the 50s, we get into the 60s, like we had this month of February. And so bitterly cold, 13 degrees below zero on December 22nd. And on the other end of that shtick, it's 62 on the 13th of February. And
it was a wet winter season for us, but not overly snowy. So we got the liquid precipitation. I think a lot of that came in that January day when we had 82 hundredths of an inch of liquid precipitation, not much snow. But again, for the season, 3¼ inches of precipitation, which was the 35th wettest of all time. And then with the snow, just 13.1 inches of snow, was tied for the 44th least snowy. So again, there's plenty of drought conditions. We'll talk about that another day.
Right.
But we at least, we were above average for precip during our driest months of the year.
And the other thing to point out about that 82 hundredths or whatever it was back in January is if it had been cold enough for all that to be snowbill, it would have been 8 to 10 inches of snow, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't get that because of those wild swings. We had temperatures that were warm enough. So instead of January being kind of a snowy month, it ended up being a wet month, but not necessarily a snow month, because we saw a lot more precipitation than normal fall in the form of rain than just snow.
Yep, rain and ice that day in particular. But now we get to do the fun part, and we get to look ahead and prognosticate as we look towards the meteorological spring season, which, again, we've mentioned, March, April, and May, that transition from the winter months to the summer months. And our average highs are on the move, Ken. Mid-40s today. By the end of the month, it's up around 60.
Well, again, March 1st, 46. April 1st, 61. May 1st, we're up to 69, and by the end of May, we're talking about lower 80s. And that, I'm going to go, I don't want to speak for everybody, but lower 80s sounds pretty good to me right now. And I'm perfectly willing to wait till May to get it. We don't have to have it next week, but.
Absolutely. And again, during this time frame, again, we'll see our last freeze of the season. We'll likely also see our first 90-degree day of the season, stuff like that. So again, warming temperatures. Those are just the highs. Again, lows. By the end of the month, it's above freezing for our normal low temperature. So again, those continue to trend in the right direction. March specifically, again, by the numbers, just mentioned it, 46 and 23 today. By the end of the month, it's 60 and 34. And the snow, Ken, I always find interesting. February is our snowiest month on average, 7.1. We cut it almost in half, more than in half, for March, down to 3.4.
And again, the thing about March, you have to remember these are averages. Now, this is the average because you're going to see some Marches. And in fact, if you look at the snowiest March ever, that is a gigantic number. That is almost 2 feet of snow during the month of March back in 1912. So again, it's possible that you can see some significant snow events. That average is just over time.
Over time, that's the 30-year average.
Right. And so 3.4 inches of snow doesn't sound like a lot, but again, that's the average. That means half the time you get more than that, and half the time you get a little bit less than that. But it's, again, there's some numbers. If you go back through history and look at some of those March snowfall events, especially with the boys and girls state basketball tournaments.
It's this time of year.
It is. You get shocked sometimes to look at how big those numbers can get. And again, the good news about getting snow in March, if you get it, is the temperatures are warming up, so it doesn't stick around for 3 months.
I went up and I looked up that March of 1912. The biggest one-day snow that month was only 6 inches.
Oh, my. And they ended up with 21 inches here in Lincoln?
There was just a lot of days of snow.
Well, there you go.
That March. So, and usually... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think it's interesting that you point that out because there are indications that mid to late next week, we could be looking at a period of, a couple, 2, 3, days, if not a little bit more, where we're going to be looking at the potential for some accumulating snow. So it's interesting that you point that out. Just because March of 2012 or 1912 had 21 inches of snow doesn't mean, oh, there was a 14-inch snow here and
it wasn't one big one.
It wasn't one big one, and that's how it can work out this time of year. So just because the calendar says March 1st, don't assume it's going to be partly cloudy and 60 degrees every day.
I'm saying, I think there are some cities in the month of March. I want to say it's Valentine, where March is actually their snowiest month of the season.
Oh, well, thank you,
February.
Bill. That's a frightening thought.
I know. I won't look up the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's Valentine. But moving on. Anyways, hottest also ever in March was 91 degrees. Happened twice, 1907 and 2012. Coldest ever is 19 below. So again, it's that fight between
110-degree difference. A 110-degree difference between the hottest temperature we've ever recorded in Lincoln in March and the coldest temperature we've ever recorded.
It's that tussle that we have between winter trying to hang on and summer maybe trying to make an early appearance. This is my favorite graphic we're going to show you because it means more golfing is going to be possible. But again, you've obviously already noticed it through the month of February, but we're going to continue to rapidly increase our daylight. I believe it's almost about 3 minutes a day.
Really?
And so for the entire month of March, we're going to add a little over an hour of daylight, going from just under 11 and a half hours to just over 12 and a half hours. Obviously, we mentioned it, but the astronomical start of spring, I believe, is the 20th. That's about when we get the equal parts day and night, 12 hours. We're also helped along by daylight saving time beginning here in just about a week and a half.
And you've got a graphic that talks about that in a little bit. But right now, I think our sunset time in Lincoln is around 6:18, 6:19, something like that. And by the end of this month, once we get through daylight saving time, it's going to be at about 10 minutes till 8 o'clock. So that's a huge jump.
Yes, and that means more golf for us, Ken.
There you go. Well, he didn't say good golf. He said
golf.
Just more golf.
Just more golf. And so Ken just mentioned it, but again, daylight saving time begins March 12th. Again, so that, I believe it's either Saturday night or Sunday night.
So did you have that clock spring out of the wall because it hit you right in the face?
Right in the face.
Because that's how you feel when you lose that hour of sleep?
And because spring's right around the corner.
Okay, that's it. That was it.
So the new sunrise that day is 7:43 a.m., new sunset 7:29 a.m., which may be good. Jamie, my youngest, the other day I was waking him up for school and his curtains were open, the sun was already up, and I tried to wake him up and he goes, "Dad, I really like it to wake up in the dark." So maybe a later sunrise.
So he'll be fine with that.
Yeah, well, may help him
He'll get to play longer after school. There'll be more daylight at the back half of the day and still be a little bit darker for him early in the morning.
There we go.
It's a win-win.
It is. Also, again, we mentioned it, again, looking at the March numbers, but again, we're going to start to up our precip as we head through the next month and chop that snow in half. Again, this is a look at just normal precip by month throughout the year. Again, obviously, April, May, June are really some of our wettest months.
Right.
March kind of transitions us into that. $1.55 is what we see on average. But our wettest March, I believe, is over 6 inches of moisture.
And this would probably be a good time also to throw out, while a lot of folks are probably ready for spring and getting ready for summer, if we end up with a lot of wet snow this month of March, when you look at the drought conditions that are still dominating the state of Nebraska, I think there are a lot of agricultural folks that would be just fine with some wet snow. And maybe a lot of wet snow in some of these places in the state where we are severely behind schedule. So as we get into March, you mentioned an inch 55, but those numbers then grow rapidly, and we need the precipitation desperately across the state. And so if that ends up being some wet snow during the month of March, I think we got to be okay with that.
Yeah, we'll take it however way we can do it when 100% of the state is under drought conditions. So that's the precip. On the other side of that coin is the snowfall. Again, mentioned it. February is our snowiest month on average. That January, February timeframe is when we pick up really a large majority of our snow. And things are really going to begin to taper off pretty quickly here as we head March, April, May. 3.5 inches of snow in April, just over an inch in April. Or excuse me, 3.5 in March, just over an inch in April, and hardly anything in May.
Well, and we mentioned that you have to take both sides of the coin here. You could see snow, but because the average temperatures are going up so rapidly as we move through the month of March and then into April, any snow that you do get during this month of March or even into April, if that occurs, doesn't stick around near as long as if you get a unexpected heavy snow in October or early November. Then it just seems like it's on the ground forever. So moisture is desperately needed. If it comes in the form of snow, and you can see the March average is just over 3 inches here in Lincoln. We need that precipitation, and remember, as those temperatures warm, as the days get longer, that snow doesn't stick around very long.
And so I ran the numbers. Days with measurable snow in Lincoln since records began in 1897, about 2,440.
2,440 days of measurable snow in Lincoln if you go all the way back to January of 1897.
Days since March 1st. So March 1st and beyond that have had measurable snow, 523.
Okay.
So you're about 20%
Yeah, I was going to
left.
say that's less than 25%.
Yeah, so about 20% of our snow days kind of left for us.
We can live with that.
We can do that. But you mentioned it, Ken, just because the snow average goes down doesn't mean we can't get a big snow. These are the top 10 snowiest Marches on record. 21.3 in 1912 is number 1. Number 10 on the list, 2002, was the last time we had more than 10 inches of snow in March in Lincoln.
Oh.
So it's been 20 years since we've had a double-digit.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yep, so it's been a while.
So then we're not worried? Is that what you're saying? We're not concerned?
I could say we're due, but...
But you're not going to.
I'm not going to.
Okay.
I'm not going to. We'll wrap it up here with a look at the Climate Prediction Center outlook for the month of March, temperature and precipitation. And again, Ken, you're going to touch on this tonight, 5, 6, and 10. This weekend looks nice. And then kind of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week, things begin to cool off a little bit. It looks like it might kind of stay a little bit cooler than average. The 8 to 14 day temperature outlook's cooler than average, and the 1 month outlook for March is cooler than average for much of the state.
And it looks like when we cool down, and that does appear to be a pretty good likelihood mid to late next week, it looks like that's going to stick around for a while. So it might not just be one of those, you know, we've had a stretch of that month of February, you might have 3 cool days in a row and then temperatures warm right back up. You might have 4 cool days in a row and then 5 days in a row of temperatures in the 50s. That might not be the case as things turn. We'll wait and see. And again, you don't like to get too specific with these longer term forecasts, that's for sure. But it looks like once we cool down, that cool down could stick around, or at least below average temperatures could stick around for a good chunk of the month of March.
I say that's what you said, below average temperature. Should also note, this doesn't mean it's going to be in the teens and 20s.
Right.
With the average high continuing to increase, likely more, maybe 30s and low 40s for highs, something like that.
That's
maybe
an important
teens and 20s for lows.
That's really an important thing to point out, Bill, too, because this, when you look at these maps and you see like the area that has no color, that doesn't mean we're going to see average conditions, and you're going to see that, I think, in a little bit here on one of these maps. It doesn't mean that the precipitation of the temperature is going to be average if you don't have a blue or if you don't have an orange on there. It means that right now, this far out, there's no indicator that below normal, above normal, or normal has any better than a 33.3% chance of occurring.
A coin flip. If a coin had 3 sides.
It basically is. It could still turn out to be way below or way above. It's just right now there's no signal helping us to indicate or give that a chance one way or the other. And here's what we're talking about. You can see how much of the state has no green on it. That doesn't mean, oh, we're going to average out normal precipitation. Now we could, but there's a 33.3% chance that we're going to average out normal, and there's also a 33.3% chance it could turn out to be above, and a 33.3% chance it could turn out to be below. So just because obviously the greens are going to indicate a better than 1/3 chance of above normal precipitation, and the deeper, darker green you get, the higher the chance is that you're going to be above average. But when you see no color, that doesn't mean, oh, it's going to turn out to be average. That means right now we can't tell one way or the other.
Yep. And so you'll obviously have another look at these tonight, 5,
Absolutely.
6, and 10. Meteorologist Brandon Rector coming up here in about 5 minutes on 10, 11 now, first at 4. Probably going to have more on this, as well as more on the forecast. Chance for maybe some light snow tomorrow.
Chances have gone down, but it is still a possibility. Some light rain or light snow possible in Lincoln. Snowfall accumulations look like they're better bet south of Lincoln, south of Grand Island, and a little bit closer to that Nebraska-Kansas border. And that seems like that's happened more than a few times with some of these weather systems, especially lately. So the numbers, the model numbers have come down a little bit compared to yesterday at this time. We'll show folks our snowfall potential map coming up. Brandon will have it at 4. I'll have it at 5, 6, and 10. And we'll continue to tweet those numbers. We'll get updated information as the day wears on.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for tuning in and joining us today. Again, Ken's going to have the latest 5, 6, and 10. Brandon's going to have the latest coming up just a few minutes on 10, 11 now, first at 4. As always, keep it tuned to 10, 11 now, both on air and online for all of your news, weather, and sports.
Happy first day of spring, everybody.
There, we're back on. Now you can
Well,
say
we're back on. Happy first day of spring, everybody. I thought you cut my mic.
No, I just cut the video.
I gave you $20 to keep my mic live this entire time.
There we go.